I suppose, Katelyn, let's go back to early days riding. Are we talking about ponies and little pony races? When was the first time you got really competitive?
Well, to be honest, I was doing pony races before I could even remember. I do sort of remember one day, Dad, he entered me in the pony steeplechase. So they were over little tiny jumps, and I was hanging on for my dear life, and Dad was leading the pony, and it's one of the funniest videos, and I'll try and get it back on online through the podcast because it's worth watching. But this is the end of the call, and just listen to the caller here.
Christopher Jones, look at him go. Christopher Jones is racing clear. He's going to win it by 6 or 7 lengths, and Rafiki's not too happy with Katelyn Mallyon. And poor old Katelyn's in an awful mess back in second spot. But Christopher Jones has won it aboard Mickey.
Back in second. How far was the leader?
Oh,
What did Christopher Jones ever go on and do? Where's Christopher Jones
I'm
now?
not sure.
You know what? No one ever remembers second except Katelyn Mallyon. Now, we've just seen that, and if you can get that on live, that would turn me off horses and riding for the rest of my life.
Not me.
And you were literally hanging on for your life.
What about when he gets a second win?
What an unruly little bugger.
It's so funny. So I think they had older kids ride the same horses in a little fast race, so they were a bit pumped up when the little kids got on them. But it taught me how to hold on. That's for sure. And you'll see that when you watch it.
And I'm sure in the UK, between the races, they do have for the kids little pony races.
Yeah, they're proper races.
But we want to get the youngsters
Why can't
to
we?
the sports, don't we?
Why can't we do that? There's plenty of kids out there, especially at Centennial Park, that I see riding, and kids love competing, especially when you're on a little pony. I think it's fun. I think we could do this.
And you could hone your pick of the yard skills. Little hairy today, little hairy. Just could be a bit bigger, but anyway.
You know what? If this got off the ground, I'd probably
start somewhere.
I'd have a stable of 5 of them, just to get it back on the road. Honestly, it's so much fun.
And I'm sure there's a pool of people that we lose that might go into dressage or show jumping, and that doesn't turn them on, but you whack them on something that goes fast, that's for me. Like you said about the polo, and if they got exposed to it early doors, you might produce a incredible jockey.
You could imagine Kerry McAvoy's kids.
Oh.
You'd nearly back him every time.
They'd have to carry 85.
Is it little
on that thing.
Reese
we should handicap them.
Do you reckon they miss the kick like Kieran does? You can't. I'm only joking, Kieran.
Greatest
leave
jockey.
the neighbour alone.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Stay out of the hood, mate.
He lives in the rich part of Clovelly, this one. Old
Oh.
Hainsey. Yeah, well,
Our
that's
house isn't
incredible.
quite as big.
Yeah.
I'll definitely put it up for everyone to see, just for the podcast.
Perfect.
What do I do now? Or did you sort of have a half an inkling that going into a media role was kind of what you might have wanted to do?
Yeah, I did express my what I wanted to do a couple of years before retiring to Andrew Hall-Lacey, who's been an amazing mentor for me at Channel 7, and he said to me, just try and do one thing before you retire, is write a Group 1 winner. And I was like, that's easy. But lucky enough, I was aboard Silent Sedition at Moonee Valley and got the Group 1 win, so it made it a lot easier for me to retire, being a Group 1 winning jockey. But yeah, I did sort of pave my way years before retiring that's what I wanted to do. So the transition was pretty easy to make in the end. Everything fell into place, and I haven't looked back.
Tom and I don't do these podcasts without doing our bit of homework on our people we're talking to. Not that we've done too many of them, to be fair. Going back to early days,
That was a dad joke.
And there might be a few shit ones through the podcast.
Yeah.
And I have it on reliable information that it wasn't that you were into it early on, it was an obsession. And have you seen, Tom, those, I don't know what countries they're in, like Middle Eastern countries, not Middle Eastern, Eastern European, Romania, don't roll your eyes, Romania. Have you seen the footage of the ladies who gallop along on all fours?
Oh, yes, I have actually. There is one weird lady.
Apparently,
That's what you used to do.
The information
I
is
wonder where I
strong.
was going to. I
That
was
was
asleep
me.
for 2 hours before that.
Did my homework, you
You
see?
did, yes.
No, you're right. I did think I was
that's
a
not
horse.
normal, Katelyn.
No, I know.
What?
And even
So
if
you could have started that trend years ago in the little town of Seymour. Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah, no, I did. I used to get all the school kids trying to do it. They were like, this kid's crazy. But
You're ahead of your time.
Andrew, my older brother, came home one day and he was an apprentice and he came back and I was running around on all fours and I had undies on my head. Andrew's like, what are you doing?
A little bit like a night
What
after
are
the
you doing?
Coogee Bay Hotel.
What's
And he
changed?
said, I said, I've just got blinkers on.
Oh, that is too funny. So, I mean,
Crazy.
wow. So that, yeah.
So
Jeez,
you
you're
were-
lucky. You're lucky you didn't have mobile phones back then. Well, that would
Lucky.
Jeez.
Very.
We'd still have the footage.
I suppose when you think you're a horse, you're pretty into it early on, aren't you? But for you,
It's a good word, though. I was obsessed, and I still am, to be honest.
well, I mean, fourth generation jockey, is that correct? I mean, it was always going to be on the cards in some way.
Yeah, but even, you're right, but from an early age, I can't remember not ever loving these animals, like, to the
Well, that's
most.
the thing. Even if you're born into it, I mean, it doesn't mean that you love horses.
No.
Like Tom Waterhouse would be the obvious, and he'll openly say that, one trip to the stables was one too many, like in terms of, being around them and touching them and having them breathe on you and cleaning stuff, whereas it was facilitated by virtue of the fact that your family was in it. But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you necessarily want the animal to be a part of your life.
No, that's right. And I think I was very lucky to have the horses there. But even my mum, who didn't come from that background, she actually grew up in Scotland, had this wild obsession with horses. And she walked into C.S. Hayes's at Flemington and said, can I please have a job? I want to work with these animals. So it's,
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then she went on to be a jockey and rode a winner at Moonee Valley in the ladies' bracelet races when the women couldn't verse the men. So, yeah, it's pretty
Wow.
amazing.
So
yeah.
you're basically the underachiever of the family.
Oh, I don't know about that. I nearly rate myself
That's what
second
Andrew
to pop.
said.
Some daggers went your way just then. No, that's and from being a horse. What? Okay. From being a horse to going to bed in your track work gear, just so when you wake up in the morning, you're ready to go.
But even tying myself to Dad when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, like, you're not getting up without me, I'm going to be there sort of
Wow.
thing, yeah.
It must be
Crazy.
great memories.
Yeah, it was. And I remember trying to get up earlier than Mum and Dad and have all we probably had 10 horses in work and I'd do all the boxes and all I wanted to hear was Dad wake up and say, oh, wow, what a good girl you are. But what
Wow.
a crazy person I was.
Are you like that now around the house?
Not really. No, I've got James to do that for me now.
Good. Keep him honest. Keep
But
him honest.
you talk about the horses, and I think it's whether it's an animal thing as well. I mean, I have a couple of kids who are 17 this year. Yes, they love their iPads and computers, and that's an inevitable part of day-to-day life. But as a little person growing up, if you can be around horses, it takes you off a screen for a long time. Sure, it's going to happen, but it's a great start.
Yeah, it certainly is. I obviously didn't grow up with iPads and all that jazz, but I just...
Not saying it's a bad thing, 'cause kids learn, but-
I watch kids now in the city and having lattes before they get on a tram to go to school, and I'm like, wowee. Like, I couldn't imagine doing that.
Off to daycare this morning. Dad, baby Chino. Allegra? No.
Amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I was having Cocoa Pops and Rice Bubbles before going to ride my pony before I go to school. It's but I must say, like, even when I was 14 years old and got my ticket to ride track work, juggling school and riding track work at 3 a.m. every morning was a real tough struggle.
So the name Pam O'Neill, does that mean anything to you?
Pam O'Neill.
And it should.
Does Pam O'Neill look after my horse in Gosford?
She
Close.
might be a different Pam O'Neill. Could be the same one.
Pam O'Neill was the first woman licensed to ride in Australia.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And as we're talking about women jockeys, right? So I had a little look at this and I found it very interesting.
This is where we need Bruce Mcavaney.
Well, Bruce would know this, and that's why you're not Bruce.
No, and I never will be.
We'll get to Bruce. He has a big segment of this as well. He has his own segment.
Do you know, listen to this, right? For 14 years, Pam O'Neill wrote a letter each month to the Brisbane Racing Club advocating for change that women could ride against the men. And at that stage, they weren't allowed on the racetrack, so she'd hand the horse to her father.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she did that in, what year did she do that in? Like 1979, the year I was born.
Amazing.
That's not that long ago.
No, it's not. And that's, as I said before, my mum was riding in the late 70s, 80s with, you know, she was, I think, they were only allowed to ride at the amateurs, but they used to hold at Moonee Valley these lady bracelets races, and there was 4 a year. But we've got a couple of videos of these races back home, and yes, they don't look polished riders, but how could you improve when you only go around 4 times a year? So they didn't really get an opportunity, but they do now, and it's fabulous to see.
Those bracelets would have been a big deal in the day, wouldn't they? Like to win one.
Yeah, massive.
Big deal.
Yeah.
And so on that, especially with your mum riding, do you feel that... what sort of part do you feel you've played, or do you feel... Was there any time where you'd get up and you'd be like, oh, fuck it, I'll show these boys? Was that a huge driver, or was it more just the fact that you were doing what you loved?
Yeah, it was probably more the fact that I was doing what I loved. I always knew I was going to be good, and I always had that mentality that I will be the best. And I remember driving past apprentice school at 12 years old, and I said to Mum and Dad at Flemington, while I was going back to Seymour, you need to tell them that I'm an exception and I'm ready to go now. Like, I need to get in early. But looking back...
Did you leave the undies on your head the first time you rode, or no?
I tell you what, I never had undies on my head, but the blinkers were definitely on because I was so focused, and I think I put so much hard work into it. My whole entire growing up life, I put everything I possibly could.
It was your world.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Every decision you made revolved around like most elite sports people.
I mean, school,
at that stage,
school is there in the background. No, you're shaking your head. I was going to say in the background, but it takes a proper back seat.
Yeah, no, it did. I couldn't care less about school. Hated school.
Really?
Yeah. All I thought about every day was going back and doing the racehorses and doing my job at home and helping Mum and Dad. You know, they worked 2 jobs, and Dad had 10 horses in the backyard. So Andrew started his apprenticeship, but that's a great story of my life as well. Andrew's 6 years older than me, so really I watched him go through everything of his apprenticeship, and every mistake he made growing up, and what Mum and Dad were yelling at him for, I just made sure I just put it in the back of my head and made sure I never did that. So you know, I learnt from him massively, even though he copped a lot from Mum and Dad. But they were great mentors.
Were they tougher on him than you?
I think so.
How did it work out in that way?
I actually feel sorry for him. They were really tough on him. He was, I suppose they had to be tough on him because he wasn't like me growing up. He didn't want to be a jockey until he was 14 years old, until school got too hard, and he's like, oh, well, I've got a good leg up here. And he had a natural gift at being able to ride a horse. So, and he's done very well in his whole career. He's still riding up in Queensland and still riding winners. So, but I do think Mum and Dad were super tough on him, but just probably preparing him for the industry that they knew was so hard. So, they just gave him a solid grounding, but they're very, very soft on me.
It's a familiar theme with young riders coming through, Tom. It's that if it's with Mum and Dad, they're tough, but they're loving and caring. They want to see the best for their kids. What parent doesn't? But they've got to prepare you for a game that is not very nice at times.
And I certainly feel for the kids that don't come from a racing family, that just get thrown to a boss and stuff, and they become sort of a bit of a factory sort of product, and don't get that love and care from a smaller stable, a bit like Ronnie Quinton, how he gives his all to his apprentices, and look how they've turned out. They've turned out champion jockeys, champion
people as well.
That's exactly right. So I do feel for those kids that sort of just
and And Ronnie sort of took the mantle on from whose name escapes me.
Theo,
right. Of course. Yeah, and it's like looking at it, it doesn't appear that there's the next person to do that with these young guys. You know, they're sort of like a band that they all stick together and they look out for them. And yes, they're tough on them, but you know, there's also that camaraderie, and they perform and they produce great people, number one, and great jockeys.
I mean, not of that vintage, but a guy like Ken Stone, the former horse dentist, I mean,
legend.
He doesn't do it now. He's retired, but yeah, kind of looking for that person to bring them through a bit.
And it's hard now because the trainers have gotten so big, and you have to get big to do well in the bigger sort of regions like Sydney and Melbourne, but it's not really that sort of from the heart sort of stuff that you used to get back in the day. So yeah, I feel for the apprentices, but I know they're doing the best they can.
Morris Lowe does a big job with them, and there are people there that are with them, but when I say a big job, you know, overseas, and I think a guy like Pat Webster, of course, is doing a bit with them. So they're not totally alone, but I mean, Theo Green, mould broken with a guy like that.
Yeah. Well, then it comes down to funding and all of that sort of stuff nowadays as well, doesn't it? Like, and time, and you know, as opposed to back then, it was just that's what happened.
Yeah.
It just became part of the process. But so yeah. Anyway, so talking about back in your apprenticeship days, so you won the apprenticeship twice, but in between times there was an incident where you had a fall at Flemington.
Yeah,
correct?
that was hard. I was winning the premiership by nearly 40 wins with 3 or 4 months to go, and I came tumbling down at I think it was May 19th 2012, and I was put into a coma for 4 days, broke my back and my face, and lacerated my spleen. Yeah, it was horrific. Probably not for me, but probably for my family watching on, because I can't really remember anything. I can't remember the week, so it's probably a blessing in disguise that I can't remember, because I came back bigger and better than ever.
But I mean, we'll come back to it, but over the time, have you, I mean, I suppose all riders, maybe not all riders, have their falls and broken bones and bruises, but that's a whole different level when that happens.
Yeah, it was huge, and the comeback trail was really long. Well, it felt long for me. It was 9 months, but could have been shorter if I didn't rush back.
Could have been a lot longer.
Well, it could have been a lot longer. Exactly, it could have been fatal. It was
absolutely.
To be honest, looking back when I was 18, looking back on it didn't bother me, but now it does. Watching back on it, just being a little bit older.
You watched it?
Oh, I used to watch it all the time, yeah.
You used to watch the fall?
Yeah, but if I watch it now, it hurts me more now that I'm older and I can sort of see. But back then I was a different person. But I must say that fall made me realise how important life is and enjoying life, and not everything was about racing. Everything before the fall was about racing. So I think I came out of it a better rider, but also a better person.
A lot of perspective.
And not saying that you're not fearless now, but back at that time, young lady riding horses, winner after winner, there would be a bit of an air of invincibility until, grounding halt. Yeah,
no, that you're right, and that's what happens when you're on. You know, when you're flying, you feel like you are invincible and you can skip across hills and stuff like that. But you soon realise that you're not invincible, and your body's very precious, and and horse racing it's a centimetres game, isn't it?
Hainsey said before it was because you couldn't pull the whip through. Is that right?
No, I actually got knocked down. Oh, yeah, I did, yeah. I would have got the whip through, don't worry.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
And you know, you probably you watch race after race after race, and I'd imagine you couldn't not watch a race with the jockey's mentality. You would watch a race differently to others.
Yeah.
Even now, you would watch races in a different way to us that have never ridden in a race, never will.
Yeah,
So.
I had to speak to many people because I really hit rock bottom and went through a lot of depression, and watching a lot of jockeys ride my horses to win on them, and lucky enough I still won the premiership, but that would have been horrific if I didn't. It wouldn't have been the end of the world, but you know what I mean. It's when you're 18 and on top of the world, and it was tough, but I came back bigger and better after that. I had 9 months off and won the following year's premiership. So Yeah, no, I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky to have gotten back in the saddle, but to be alive and well is probably the best thing about this whole big fall in 2012.
Did you want to get that important call that came through?
It was your mum, wasn't it?
Yeah, she loves you, Tommy.
She's the nicest woman.
That's why
Does she
she's
know
calling.
Tom?
Well.
She does.
Nicest woman in the world.
You could be nice to people you want to be nice to. I know that.
I can.
You can be as sweet as pie. It's sickening.
What's it called?
Jekyll and Hyde.
Jekyll and Hyde. Heckle. I'm a little.
Not as thin as I think I
That
am.
will be being edited. And so the depression, was that something that lasted after you got back on the horse, literally, or was that an ongoing thing, or was it was really an intense focus and a disappointment whilst you weren't riding?
Well, the depression hit me because I couldn't move. So I was sitting on the couch all day and I was in a neck brace, like a full body brace. So I literally couldn't move. All I did was eat. I didn't want to leave the house, and Mum and Dad were unbelievable in that time. But still, all I did was watch the races and just seat myself into a bigger hole. But once I was able to come out of that and get mobile and get back to the gym and stuff, it got better for me. But I was very lucky to have Lisa Stevens down in Melbourne, who looks after all the jockeys' mental health, and she was excellent in that time.
Oh, great.
And friends and family around you to talk you through day by day, I don't imagine.
Yeah, you definitely need friends and family in that sort of time. It helps it go a little bit quicker, and that to have that family support, I was very lucky.
And take the incident aside with your riding, the ups and downs in the life of a jockey, the disappointments, the setbacks, and obviously recently there was the case with Linda Meach. You're getting taken off rides and all of that. I mean,
Happens daily.
Numerous times a day, I'm sure. It could happen 3 or 4 rides a day. Like a ride that you had the week before that you're now not on. Well, firstly, is there an element of, the mood fluctuation because of that, or is there that sort of inbuilt resilient factor in, you saw your brother go through with it, so you just knew that was part of the game?
That's right, yeah.
And then, what is your opinion on the Linda Meach?
Well, I think that
story?
was just absolutely blown way out of proportion. That happens on a daily basis. Like, did everyone forget the week before that Jai McNeil got taken off Kingsville Dream and won a Group 1?
Exactly.
It doesn't. It really annoys me, this boy-girl issue, and everyone gets their opportunity if they're good enough. And as I said before, this happens to everyone. It's happened to the best. It happens to James. It happens to Damien Oliver. It doesn't matter who you are. And yes, it's unfortunate that it was Linda at the time, but I think that was blown way out of proportion. And yeah,
I wonder if she had a time again, would she say, "I hope it gets beat"? I would hope not.
I'd hope not too, because I think it was just all ridiculous that was even said. If I got taken off Silent Sedition after winning a Group 1 on it. So,
Did you?
Yeah, but you know what? I got back on her. So I don't know whether I would have got back on her if I said, I hope it gets beat.
I guarantee you wouldn't have. I guarantee. What happens if, who'd you get taken off for? Mark Zara. What happens if he rang up sick the day of the race?
That was Craig Williams.
Oh, Craig Williams, sorry. The day of the race.
Yeah.
She'd be straight back on it.
One thing I learned from a very early age in this industry is you never burn bridges, and I just
sure it was
think
Craig Williams? I thought it was Zara.
In your instance, you mean Craig Williams, or?
Oh no, I mean
Oh,
Linda.
sorry.
Yeah.
In my
Yeah.
Zara.
Like if he calls up sick the day of the race,
Yeah.
Linda, you got the ride.
Yeah.
You win a derby.
Yeah. But how about the 20 other horses that you've got in work that you ride?
And it's as much about loyalty as anything else. I mean, I think my colleague at Sky Racing, Johnny Scourse, might have the best quote of all time. If you want loyalty, buy a dog.
And buy a male dog.
I think this industry's the.
I'm only joking.
I think the industry's just gotten too big and the money's too great now and the loyalty's gone out of it. But I mean, it's just the times changing, isn't it? You've got $10 million colt on the line, and putting someone from the country on or putting the best on. Like, I just think it's probably been happening for a long time, but now probably a little bit bigger because there's so much money involved.
Oh,
but there's still so many opportunities.
There are disappointments in life, but you get on with it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right.
And back on that track, in terms of the previous part of that question, in terms of you with throughout your riding career? Were there extreme highs, extreme lows that you really felt?
Yeah, well, they were sort of all the time, but I wouldn't say extreme.
Right.
I just sort of got on.
You
with
just
it.
rolled with the punches.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I did used to get upset if I gave one a bad ride, and if I gave one a bad ride, and I felt really sorry for the owners more so than anyone else, because they're paying up for the horses, and I sort of knew where it, from my grounding, the owners paying up for dad's horses, and they'd be so disappointed and stuff like that. So, I'd always try and come back with something positive, or just tell them how it is. But it is tough. It's a tough game, and you need to be resilient.
Fair part of the jockey's life now is coming back and explaining to owners in an articulate way what just happened, and then someone shoves a microphone and a camera in your face and asks the same thing at times. And riders, it's part of it now. Yeah,
well, it has to be. And the industry has gotten bigger and better because of it, I think. I love watching the races on Sky and Channel 7, and, I'd love seeing, so you can get so much out of the jockeys now, and even owners and trainers, and it's great for all the viewers.
You work next to a legend of Australian broadcasting in Bruce Mcavaney. I, for one, am so jealous.
Introduce him.
I'm the luckiest person in the world.
The other day at the races, I went up and introduced myself, because if you don't do that, you're never going to meet people. So I went up and said, "Hi, Bruce, how are you?" I'm Richard Haynes, and he was just lovely.
Yeah.
And, "Hi, how are you? Do you enjoy your job?" "Yes, I do, Bruce." And it lasted all of 10 seconds, but what a lovely, lovely man.
He just puts a smile on your face, doesn't he? He's
Star.
I'm very lucky to have him work next to Bruce, but also to have him as a mentor. I speak to him every week, and and as a good friend. He's an amazing man. I love his passion for horse racing. It's honestly, it's like no other. And no matter where it is, whether it's at Kembla Grange for their big meeting, or on Everest Day, he's always the same. He loves horses, just like me. So we've always got a lot to say each week to each other.
So his passion for sport in general is unbelievable, isn't it? And therefore, and everyone says his knowledge of what, in your experience, what makes him Bruce Mcavaney?
Probably his hard work, but more so the passion. I think because he genuinely loves what he does, whether it's running or swimming or any sport. But I must say horse racing is a special place in his heart. But definitely, that's what I see from him. But I'd say because he loves it so much, he puts a lot of work into it. So when he comes to the races, he's done all his homework. He's got, handwritten notes about every single horse, jockey, trainer. He's and that's one thing I've learnt from him. I write everything down. I don't do much on the computer. I write everything down so it sticks in my brain. And he's an amazing man. He's like a walking encyclopedia. And if I need to know something, I ring Bruce straight away, and he'll know. Yeah,
what a person to be a sponge off.
Oh, and to learn off. I'm so lucky. It's only my second year in the media, and to work next to Bruce, I'm learning so much. So
it's insane. It's like
I'm the
being a
luckiest
young
person in the
halfback
world.
next to Andrew Johns. He's heir apparent, as it were. But so, and on the broadcasting thing, where do you think we need to go to attract more viewers? Because it's an issue. It's a real issue. The engagement, education. What in your mind, having now been on the other side of the fence, and now you're a key part of that broadcasting network nationally, what would you?
Well, I suppose everyone's different, but I personally love the stories about the horses, and especially, a story like Castelvecchio and Richard Litt, like their stories. I love hearing those little stories, especially the highway races and the championships and stuff like that. That's what I like seeing. But look, I think everyone's doing a tremendous job for what they're trying to achieve, and I love listening to the jockeys, even though it annoys them, I could imagine, because most of them are losing weight, which is annoying, but they're very good with their time, and I suppose those little tiny stories that just mean, from the bottom of your heart. Those heart-feeling stories, especially around the championships. I love those. And another thing is I've joined an association called the Thoroughbred Sport Horse Association. So what we're trying to do is put prize money on, we are putting prize money on for only thoroughbred classes only over show jumping, but we want to broaden it to showing, to eventing, to everything. So only for thoroughbreds, you get prize money. I think it's $5,500 for the class. I competed in one 2 weeks ago and ran 5th. So got a little tiny chunk of the money out of there, but I think putting back into to people paying up for the horses after they retire, just giving a little bit something back to them. I think everything helps, and I'd love to do that at the races, in between races at say Canterbury or Randwick, and showcase them because they're incredible animals, and I absolutely love my horse who used to work on at Lloyd Williams's.
Little white cloud, isn't it? Mm. Beautiful horse.
Yeah, he's lovely.
On that, Katelyn, I'm pretty sure Waller Racing have been a supporter.
Certainly.
I think Richard and Michael Freeman in recent times have supported. So thoroughbred stables are getting behind it. I know the BreedNet website, which I know well, Tara, of course. I know that she is promoting it as best as possible. I think so.
That's a fantastic.
It's coming along. It's coming along.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's going to get bigger and better. And Chrissy Harris, who's running it, is actually opening up her facility at Stonewall, which is 103 acres, and she's putting 3 Olympic-size arenas in there. So
wow,
we're very, very lucky to have Chrissy run the association, and we're going to hold as many shows as we can next year when it's up and running.
No, so now rewind a bit back to Sydney. And how you came, and you mentioned James. So did you know James for a while before you started a relationship with him, or was it a...
Well, of course I knew of him because he's an unbelievable jockey. So I knew him as Godolphin's retained rider the last couple of years.
But you
when
didn't
I was
know
riding
him
town.
personally?
Not personally, no.
Right.
I
Right.
probably saw him out. But Tommy Berry and Shani invited me for dinner. I think it was Caulfield Cup night in 2016, and invited James, and that's where it all started from.
Wow. And how long's that been?
Just over 3 years.
How good.
And obviously then it didn't come with a warning of what would happen.
No, not at all. It was fun for a couple of months, and I was riding in the Melbourne Cup for Lloyd Williams, and then won on the Little White Cloud on Emirates Stakes Day.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Beat James, so I was pretty happy about that. And then we went to Bali for a week, and that was sort of, you go back to Sydney, I'll go back to Melbourne. I was flying at the time, so there was no way I was going to move to Sydney, nor was James going to move to Melbourne. So anyway, cut a long story short, he rocked up on my doorstep a couple of days later, and he was disqualified for 18 months. So I suppose if that didn't happen, we probably wouldn't have been together.
But he rocks up on your doorstep, Katelyn, and says, "Hi, there's some news about to break. This is what's going to happen."
Trouble.
He can be no more forthright than tell you what's.
Well,
about to
to be
happen.
honest, I still don't know the full story. James is very quiet, as you all know, and he doesn't. He sort of moved on with his life, and there was no discussion about it. Obviously, if I tried to bring it up, he'd go all quiet and he'd get upset. So, no discussion of it whatsoever. We've put it behind us, and as I said, the bright side out of the story is that we're together from it, because that probably wouldn't have happened otherwise.
And on that, it's easy to say he handled things well now because he's back and he's flying and that's all great. But initially, obviously, it must have been extremely testing. But the great thing, watching him, he took it on the chin. He actually used it as an opportunity to go and live a bit of life, consolidate a relationship, be a grown-up. Because so many times the jockeys, your actual life is just taken from you because it revolves around it's a regimented lifestyle that a lot of the times you're fasting and you're whatever else, blah, blah, blah. But went overseas, how was that?
Yeah, well, so as I said before I had that fall, everything was racing for me. And I suppose that was the same for James until he got disqualified. He realised that, not everything was about racing. So I, lucky enough, won a Group 1 in the February the following year. And then we took 2 months off and travelled around Europe. And, it was amazing to actually be a normal person.
Yeah.
We missed out on that childhood, that sort of 18, 19-year-old sort of years. So, to travel around, we went to Spain and England and Italy and Croatia and met up with friends over there. We had the best time, and he wouldn't have been able to do that, nor would I, if he didn't get disqualified and I didn't win a Group 1. So we were very, very lucky.
And you clearly just get each other. Like, I mean...
Well, he doesn't really talk, so it's not, you can't really get up.
What do you mean he doesn't talk? Is he
talks, he talks if you move your ball in the bunker. Don't worry about that.
He's exceptionally quiet, honestly. It's... Yeah,
well, he's a shy country boy, isn't he?
Unless you're talking about anything other than racing, you'll get something out of him. But if you talk about racing, honestly, it's zip. I don't get anything out of him whatsoever, which is annoying.
Are you saying that you have other interests apart from racing? I mean, are there other interests, are there?
And so, I mean, he's at the top of the tree. How do you... And must be a double-edged sword because you understand the game, but also, you know, you might also throw a comment here and there or like, how do you both switch off from racing?
Yeah, it is difficult because obviously I'm doing my form for Channel 7 on the Saturdays and I'm looking at 300 plus horses individually, and sometimes I get to one that he knows well and I'll be like, can you tell me anything about this horse? And I just don't get anything out of him whatsoever. Yep, it's good. Like, thanks, James. Yeah, but it is hard to switch off, but I don't know, we definitely we work it out. We go for long walks around Coogee to Clough Valley, and we do take winter off, so we have a good couple of months off and get to travel. We usually go see somewhere in the world that we haven't seen before, so that's really cool. And we definitely do switch off because we don't really talk about racing back home. So it's nice to have that sort of switch off time, but it is hard because obviously we both enjoy racing.
And have you thought about taking up golf?
No, I've tried. It's really hard.
It's bloody hard.
But you know, one thing we do, even though it includes horse riding, is playing polo.
Oh,
we love playing polo. So we've been doing lessons out at Hawkesbury, and
Where do you go?
To Windsor Polo Club.
Is that with who's that with?
With Nicola and Luke.
Oh, Luke,
Yeah. And our coach Earl. So we've been learning how to play polo, and we're having a chukker on Monday actually. And then we play the Magic Millions polo game.
Awesome.
Their Christmas party. You going to their Christmas party?
No. Maybe.
Next Saturday. Oh, you might be working.
Are you going, Tom?
I think I'm going to.
Oh, I might come there.
Come. That's fantastic. It's like rugby on a horse.
It's the best, isn't it? Honestly, it's the best game. I'd love to take it up.
It looks really
It's
tiring.
rough.
It looks quite strenuous.
Jeez,
I mean,
so
riding a horse, you got a fair head start. How heavy is your? Is it a stick? What?
It's
very heavy.
It's
a mallet.
it's pretty. But it's the technique, really. It's tough to sort of get your head around. But Tommy Berry's playing with us on Monday, and he's actually wants to carry it in the left hand, but that's against the regulations. So I don't know how we're going to go with that. Poor old Tommy. And Huey's going to play too, so that'll be a bit of fun.
You'd have to. It would be all about timing. I mean, riding timing, but also the timing with your mallet.
Oh, especially at a flat-out gallop.
Oh.
It's actually quite
They're
hard.
amazing. They're amazing.
I think Lizzie's half getting ready
Lizzie
for that
gets
as
into
well.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, she's loving it. Getting back on.
Yeah,
riding horses.
Lizzie's an awesome rider.
And so that's the last however many years. What's the next 5 years got in store for Katelyn Mallyon?
Well, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing at the moment, working for Channel 7 and just enjoying the racing and making sure James is at the top of his game. He's actually battling gastro for the last couple of days, so he's not been well this week, but he's ready to bounce back for the weekend. And he's just making sure everything's right for him, really. And obviously he's number one priority. I wouldn't have moved to Sydney otherwise. And I suppose that's what I'll keep doing.
The bloke I spoke to on the phone last night, just to learn a bit more about you, Katelyn, the bloke on the phone last night, he said, I don't know what James is waiting for.
Here we go.
Oh, what a stitch up.
What's Tommy waiting for?
And he rode really well at Ballina yesterday, this bloke I was talking to as well.
Here
Hey,
you go.
I made the ultimate commitment. A child.
Oh. No, I'm going to do the reverse one.
I'm living in sin.
And that isn't just lately.
I love Canna.
Everyone loves Canada. You don't live with her.
Order of Australia for Canada.
Oh, my God. Hashtag nut job. No, we all love Canada. Well, there could be some news there. on the cards one day. Well, soon. Whenever.
That's exciting.
But so kids, they're obviously in the plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Marriage and kids, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I'm only 25, but I
Are you?
I am, yeah. Do I look older?
You are mature beyond your years.
Thank
which is a
you.
huge compliment.
And
You
he's not,
are.
and he's not saying you look older than that, I don't think. Are you?
No, God, no, you don't look older than bloody 21. But
That'd be terribly rude to say.
I couldn't have stood still at the age of 25 for an hour like you just have. So you're ahead of me. Yeah. Well, it's exciting. You must be... You've paved your own way, which is full credit to you. But you must also pinch yourself at where you're at and what the next 10 years have in store.
Yeah, I pinch myself. As you said, I'm so thrilled with how my life's turned out, and I've worked hard for it. But I honestly want to really promote horse racing and horse welfare and the apprentices, and I'm always looking to help people, and I'm very, very lucky.
Is it true that when you made the decision to retire from riding, that you didn't really tell anyone? Because I understand that the first time your brother Andrew found out was when he heard you might have mentioned to Dean Pettit on the pony that this is it, and he didn't really see it coming.
Didn't he? I suppose Andrew and I we talk often, but I wouldn't tell him how I'm actually feeling. But I suppose I did keep it quiet because you don't want to retire and then come back, realise that you made the wrong decision.
John Farnham. 50 comebacks he's made.
That's one
Interesting
thing.
comparison.
Because
he's always coming back.
I said to
Come back
myself, I don't want to retire and then make a comeback. I just don't want to be one of those people. Not that I have anything wrong with it, but I just want to, once I'm done, I'm done. So, there will be no comeback. But I'm enjoying riding my little white cloud over the jumps and still getting my horse fix. I go down to Randwick and go to Les Bridges' stable. I'm in love with Classique Legend. He's a little smoocher. So go for a little horse cuddle. And, I don't miss going fast on them, but still love competing.
Racing has been in the news in recent times from a welfare perspective, more than not. The whip, riders have used the whip. Your thoughts on its use, the name whip, and I think even in recent times, spurs have also come under some scrutiny. What's your take on these kinds of calls?
Well, the spurs can barely do anything. I can tell you that right now because we don't ride long enough. And on the whip, yes, it doesn't sound like a nice tool, but honestly, everyone needs it. It's a safety tool. It's an encouragement. Maybe we should give it another name. But honestly, it's... I actually said to someone the other day that I used to, when I was an apprentice at Flemington to Matthew Allerton, Simon Zara, I used to purposely ride the young horses and not give them a slap or give them encouragement because they get used to it. That's how much it doesn't hurt them. Because I used to wait until race day just to give them a little bit more of a fright because they haven't seen it before. Because honestly, those old horses, they just laugh at you. Well, they used to laugh at me. And I used to be able to, have a little bit of force, but honestly, they get used to it. They're very tough animals, and it's just an encouragement thing, just to get a little bit more out of them.
Yeah, funnily enough, we spoke to Tommy last week, and his opinion was exactly the same as yours. And I think even more so, your opinion, is just as relevant, if not probably the most relevant, in that you've done it, and you're now part of the audience.
Yeah.
So you sit around people who haven't done it, who comment on, we should ban the whip. It's a bad look. Safety is everything in our industry, first and foremost.
Exactly, and
Number
they've got
one.
minds of their own, and you can get some naughty horses like you can get some naughty children. So it's 100% needed, the whip, and I just think, especially for a punter looking on, honestly, the first thing that you want from your horse is just to be given every chance. If they bring a rule in that you can't leave your hands off the reins with the whip, how are you going to have? Honestly, how are you going to have any faith that those horses are going to have every possible chance? Because quite easy to just give one a very little tap down the shoulder. So you're going to lose the respect from them too.
And I think as race horses are going to be doing their best.
They are.
And you know, every rider's that little bit different in different styles, but ultimately when they're doing their best, that whip or persuader in your hand is just
Balancer.
Yes. Tom's gone got this balancer.
What do you think about that one?
No, I like that.
Thank you.
It's a good one.
Just to keep, it's about keeping just the mind on the job to a certain degree and doing their best to find the line.
Especially if you watch a 2-year-old race, they'll do zigzags up the straight, and God help the jockey if they don't have a balancer.
Remember Huey with Performer?
That's right.
When he saw the side screen, that's how they can react. They can literally go sideways on you, can't they?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's a tool that's needed, and I think that. I think that everyone's blowing this way out of proportion as well. The whip thing, I think, just keep it the same. Everything's working well. Don't change what works.
Broad question, but anything else in the racing world that you look at and think that could be a little better? It is a big, open-ended question.
Maybe just the apprentice school probably the facilities need to be a little bit better. Maybe to be honest, maybe it's really difficult and it's opening a can of worms, but like those little small trainers, they probably can't afford to have an apprentice, but they probably the best ones for them. But I think everyone's doing their best, but what else?
Well, you're doing a big part of it with that thoroughbred.
Equine welfare.
Rehoming.
Absolutely,
I mean, and to have those sport-specific classes, because I did a lot of the performance horses and still do occasionally, and you see a lot of the thoroughbreds they can't compete against a lot of those warm bloods in those extreme dressage movements, and then people get deterred, and there's no return, if any, just to even cover costs. So then
that's right. But what we want to do is actually team up with Racing New South Wales and the Team Thoroughbred to be able, because they've got the properties with all the ex-race horses, and what we want to do is we want people to look at the thoroughbred, an ex-thoroughbred. They don't have to have raced. They just have to be registered and say, we want one of those, and we're going to go out to the property and choose from however many you've got out there, which I'm sure will be a couple of hundred, and take one, rather than going to buy a warm blood that you're going to compete for 50 cents for, or a bag of feed at the races, but you can go and ride a thoroughbred in a thoroughbred class for $5,500 of prize money. So that's what we're trying to do, is get the thoroughbreds back on track, and because they're amazing animals. And of course the ATC ambassador horse, Mr. Bean, the rearing horse, he was a racehorse. Can you believe that?
Wow.
How many takes to get that shot?
Well,
one of the most amazing shots of the year.
It was probably 10 times he reared up, and every time was spectacular for me, for everyone watching.
Did he obviously knew what he was doing, but did you at any stage feel unsafe?
No.
He just looked after you.
Yeah, but that's what thoroughbreds do. They make you feel comfortable. I mean, you get your odd one that's not so nice, but honestly, majority of them, all they want to do is please you, and that's the best thing about the thoroughbred, is that they're amazing animals. They can do anything. They can be polo ponies. Every time I'm at Windsor, I'm on an ex-race horse playing polo, so they can do just about everything.
Unreal.
And the way you're doing it, you provide people with a support network and education, which is really important as well.
That's right, yeah. And we're trying to document everything that we do, and especially our sponsors, who we're very thankful for, that are sponsoring our shows for the Thoroughbred Sport Horse. We're very lucky, but we really want to get this huge and get it as big as possible, so that maybe one day we can actually compete against other states and do little teams, and only for thoroughbreds. So, we're doing our bit.
Yeah, you guys are strong on social media, and just get the word out there.
That's right.
That's all you can do.
Yeah, that's right. But we always need money to sort of get behind it, because obviously we're giving out prize money, so everything's sort of we're really relying on our sponsors. So hopefully we can get some funding, and it'll be amazing. And then we can stretch out to every other thoroughbred discipline that they can do.
Tell us, what's it like riding in a Melbourne Cup?
The best feeling in the world. The lead up to it was thrilling. I was very lucky to be aboard a Sign, which was one of Team Williams, Lloyd Williams' horses. He had 5 runners in the race, and I won the Herbert Power and got enough penalty to get me into the Melbourne Cup on him, and he was a special horse to me. I rode him a lot, and I must say I drew barrier 22. He didn't really have the best chance of winning the Melbourne Cup, but I think I was able to really enjoy it for that fact. So I really soaked it up. It was an amazing feeling.
He was a kind horse.
He was beautiful, yeah.
Wasn't he?
He's a big, strong horse. So as all the Lloyd's horses were, they were they were from Europe, so they were beautiful European stayers. They used to, find a beautiful rhythm, and down the back in the Melbourne Cup at about 1,000, you have to pinch yourself and say, I'm actually in the Melbourne Cup.
It must be surreal.
Yeah, because everything's quiet back there, and you're just in another horse race. But out of the barriers and jumping and hearing the crowd is one of the most exhilarating feelings I've ever had.
Yeah.
And riding against idols and mentors and some amazing people in your profession.
And, of course, putting those silks on in the Melbourne Cup. Honestly, it was...
National anthem.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. And the Melbourne Cup parade, amazing. Everything, the lead up to it was incredible. And then to top off the week and win on the Little White Cloud at huge odds on the last day of the carnival was massive. And as I said, I was dating James at the time, and he was on the hot pot favourite that ran second. So he's on our wall at home. Now he's my pony.
Have you got the photo?
Yes.
Was the photo finish?
I bet him
in the frame?
Yeah, he's in the frame, of course.
So good.
If ever there's a blue,
painting and give it to him for his 30th.
If ever there's a blue at home, James, just look up there, buddy. It's on the wall.
Yeah, he's a good old horse. But yeah, I've been really lucky in my whole career.
I could say something, but I'm not going to because it's quite vulgar. It's too early in the morning. So I won't say it. All right.
What else?
Last question of mine. Best horse you've ever ridden?
Oh, great question.
Thank you.
I've ridden Saintly 2 laps of the Big Sand at Flemington, and
wow.
No joke, he pulled my arms out, and he was older than me at the time. I was 18, and
wow.
he was 21 or something like that. He is extraordinary.
How did that come about?
I asked Reg every morning because he used to come in and lead the Melbourne Cup field out, and Jason Patton, who was working there at the time, he used to ride in work, and I used to just, please let me just ride him one morning. And anyway, they did one morning, and what an unbelievable horse, and still felt like he could be at the races. So he's probably the best horse I've ridden, but in a race, maybe, I rode Al Mandan a couple of times. He won a Melbourne Cup. The best feel that I've gotten from a horse is a horse called Johannes Vermeer. Aidan O'Brien, I ran second on him in the Caulfield Stakes a couple of years back, and the feel that he gave me was extraordinary, that turn of foot, and then he ran second in the Melbourne Cup to Rekindling. So I've ridden some really good horses in my time, but it's hard to actually just pick one out, but I'd say probably Johannes Vermeer.
But a horse like Saintly, even at that age, I mean, surely he's just known that he's good his whole life. It's no fluke. There is something about him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he didn't just go for a little canter out there. He wanted to gallop. And, that's another thing about horses. They love running. You put them out in the paddock, and the first thing they'll do is go for a gallop. And we saw Winks in the paddock the other day do the exact same thing. Yeah, especially good horses. They just want to be fit. They want to keep running. And, Saintly, he blew my mind that morning.
Any horses aside, any role models, if they're in the jockey's room or not? Any people you think, gee, they're unreal and they're a bit of an inspiration?
Well, growing up when I first started my apprenticeship, Michelle Payne was a really big inspiration. Very good jockey, but probably in the end, my mum has been the biggest support. Obviously, she knew how tough it was to be a female in the industry. So she's been there all along. So she's been my rock. But I've had a couple of really good mentors. But now my biggest mentor is Bruce Mcavaney.
We can't thank you enough for popping down, and I hope that we've covered most things in regards to what you would like to talk about, but certainly
Yeah.
let us know if you haven't. But otherwise, incredibly insightful, educational, and your story's a fantastic one to follow. It really is.
Yeah.
It's and you are in the thick of it. Like you are, you and James are a real big part of the next 10 years of Racing Australia. So it's bloody exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I hope I can keep
20
educating
years,
people,
30 years, whatever it is.
especially about the equine welfare and horse racing. So reach out to me on social media if you ever want to ask a question, because I'm always there to help.
I thought you and Kenny were the power couple.
What is it?
Isn't that what?
Getting me.
Oh.
I knew Kenna was the one for me when. Well, I think we've been on our third date.
Didn't you chase her for a couple of years?
No.
When did she know that? Other way around. Not she was the one for me.
No, and
she
said-
she tolerated you to a point.
And she,
And it still is.
Most people will be bored by this, but I'll say it anyway. And she said it was 10:30 in the morning, and somehow racing came up and Winks came up. Like I was going out to watch Winks races. She texted me, "Did Winks win?" It's 10:30. Oh, beautiful. That's the
No,
one
but
for
she
me.
will.
That is the one for me. She's like, why would you race them in the afternoon? It's hot. That's a pretty good point, actually.
Very valid. Common sense.
No, well, Katelyn, honestly, can't thank you enough, and I'll hand over to Richard because he's much better at signing off than I am.
How was your coffee, Katelyn?
It was
The
really,
cappuccino?
really nice. They always make a good coffee down here at Little Jack Horner. So if you're in town at Coogee, make sure you get down there because it's a perfect view of Coogee Beach. And they do beautiful egg and bacon rolls and everything down here. So they're an amazing cafe.
Does James watch you eat them?
Yeah, he does. He'll only have a little bowl of fruit.
That's why he can't swing a golf club.
Big thanks to Stephen Seabrook, who knows the owner of Little Jack Horners, and we got him.
Transport, isn't he?
Yeah, NZB Air Freight. Stephen Seabrook, good guy, knows the owner, rang the owner. Little Jack Horners, thank you. Well, we might even be back.
We'll definitely be back. This is fantastic. Great coffee. Yep.
Katelyn Mallyon, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been fun.